Genetics is the science of genes, heredity, and the variation of organisms. Today, science is able to study DNA in agriculture, humans, and animals to detect diseases. For example, studying the genetics in drought-resistant plants helps us to recognize their unique, distinguishing qualities and enables us to replicate these characteristics. In humans, genetic science is able to detect diseases, enabling us to reverse defective genes. Today on 48 Hours, we look at the career of a genetic scientist. 48 Hours, own your future. Meet Khanyisile, a grade 10 pupil from Bloemfontein. After being diagnosed with scoliosis, Khanyisile's greatest dream is to become a genetic scientist so that she can apply herself to finding cures for diseases such as these. Let's get to know her better.
The school that I go to is St. Joseph's Christian Brother College, and the subjects that I take are English, pure maths, physical science, life science, life orientation, and religious education. I developed a passion for genetics when I realized that I was diagnosed with scoliosis, and then when it led to me finding out on the internet what are the possible reasons that it could develop, and then it led to my genes, and then it led me for the love of genetics. Scoliosis is a deformity, it's like a curvature of the spine where it doesn't necessarily prevent you from not living. I personally felt like my self-esteem was lowered and I couldn't necessarily wear particular clothes because it would show my curvature, and it's just a hindrance to your self-confidence. When I look down my family tree, my mother, my father, my grandmother, my aunts and uncles, it seems like none of them have it. So it must been a genetic mutation within me. I think genetic science can help the world and humanity because it's very important to know what are you made out of, and just knowing how your genes play a role in your life, and it can actually shape your life. Today is so important to me because I'll be unpacking the reasons why scoliosis could have happened to me and just expanding my knowledge. And it would be the first time me doing practical work, and that work experience. Now I'm off to meet my mentor at Ngaba Labs, Katlego.
Katlego is a genetic scientist at Ngaba Biotech in Pretoria. His greatest passion is science. He has a BSc in medical sciences from the University of Pretoria and an honours degree in genetics. He loves genetic science because it satisfies his curiosity about the creation of life.
Thank you, Katlego, for having me here. I have so many questions to ask. My first question is, what do you do here at Ngaba Biotech?
Well, here at Ngaba, I am the sales coordinator, and my dual role would also be an application specialist for one of our brands.
How did you get to this point in your career?
After my postgrad, I came here to start off as an intern and worked in the labs. The first lab that I worked in was an oligo production lab, and I was busy rotating throughout the labs, the sequencing, and other labs that we have here at Ngaba. Found my way in sales and started doing sales there. Went off a bit, other companies garnered more experience, and came back here to be the sales coordinator and application specialist.
So what undergraduate degree do you think I should start with?
It all depends on your curiosity right now.
I'm interested in the prevention of diseases and the study of DNA.
There are various institutions that would offer you a BSc in genetics, or like myself, you can start broadly in a medical sciences degree and then subspecialize in genetics.
And what does the training involve?
Well, you would have both wet lab, where you pipette and do numerous things. Then you'll have academic training, where they would instill the principles of molecular biology, genetics, and all other related fields.
What subjects should I take if I want to become a genetic scientist?
Pure mathematics, the obvious course, You'd also need physics, chemistry, and life sciences.
What are the day-to-day requirements of a genetic scientist?
A genetic scientist that is at a managerial level would be sitting behind their desk and analyzing data that will be coming from the tests that were being run. Genetic scientists at the entry level would be in the lab every day doing a specific task or range of tasks that will be given through the pipeline of management.
Katlego, thank you for your time. I'm dying to just see what your work experiences are. Can you please show me?
Sure, you're welcome.
Coming up after the break, Khanyisile gets the chance to work in a lab. Welcome back. Before the break, we met Khanyisile, a young lady in grade 10 who developed an interest in genetic science after being diagnosed with scoliosis. 48 Hours introduced her to genetic scientist Katlego, who put her in the capable hands of Acclaim, who's going to give her some work experience in a lab.
Okay, this is the receiving lab. So every sample that comes to us, this is the first stop. We come here, we open, we check the information sheets as to the customer name, the type of test that's required. Once we know that, we take the sample to the extraction laboratory where we do the DNA extraction. You can go and check the DNA extraction facility. This is our extraction laboratory. So this is where everything that needs to be extracted, DNA, RNA, is done here, and it's important to do it under a very protected environment, which is why we do it under the fume hood. So this kind of sucks the air outside so that you don't, whatever the aerosols, so when you do extraction, you don't inhale those. So the system sucks the air to the outside so that you stay sterile.
Okay, so where to next?
Okay, follow me. This is our QC space. So we have done our DNA extraction. Now we need to know how much of the DNA we have. So what you see here before you, it's a spectrophotometer. So what it does is it measures the amount of DNA in the sample. Everything kind of absorbs light at a certain wavelength. So we would know at that wavelength how much DNA is in the sample. Okay, can you see me? We are now at our PCR setup station, and the robot that you see here, this is where the magic happens. So all the ingredients have been placed here for us. So the system will do the setup for us, and then once that is done, we're going to take the plate that is ready for PCR reaction and go and put it into the system. You'll see the system when we go that side. We've been through different labs and see how we do stuff. So basically all the reactions or tests that we do, we confirm them in here. We have a test, however, that we have set up for you. We want you to go through every step that we have explained. We'll go through that workflow until we confirm your results in this very same lab. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Awesome. Let's go. So as Katlego has mentioned, we've prepared a test for you.
What is the test?
So the test is basically it's an animal genetic health test. Owner of the dog send us samples to test if their dog has blindness or not. So it's more genetic test based. So the samples that we have is blood samples. So the test here that we were prepared for you is called progressive retinal atrophy disease, which affects, as I mentioned, the dog's eyesight.
Okay, I'm interested. So how do you do this test?
This is just one of the samples that we just received. So we're going to open it, but before we do that, we're going to pick up the gloves.
First, they have to read the type of test that needs to be executed, which is progressive retinal atrophy for a dachshund. Now that they know more about the test, they extract the DNA and make sure that it is properly mixed or homogenized so that it can pass QC. QC also ensures that ample DNA is extracted and mixed. Once it passes QC, it's taken to the PCR machine, where the machine targets the region of DNA that needs to be tested. In this instance, we're testing to see if someone's beloved dachshund has the blind gene, so to speak. While waiting for the results, Khanyisile took a moment to share her thoughts with us.
I was actually surprised that I get to do such a task. I was actually happy that I was just trying something new, you understand? So I was actually quite interested and curious to just finding out.
In the task, that was quite a long one. For a first timer, you could see she was kind of shaking there and there in terms of the handling of the lab stuff. But I would definitely give it to her. Being her first time, I think she did quite well.
Drum roll, please. This much.
So our sample X, that's the subject, what you were busy with throughout the day. We have the carrier. We also have the clear, which is not affected at all. It's not a carrier. Does not have the gene, affected gene, and we also have the affected data. So the highlighted, those are the changes in question. When you look at the carrier, the changes that you see in the carrier doesn't match the change that you see in the sample X.
No.
So altogether, when you wrap up, what would you say about our test?
That the animal isn't affected.
Good. So we can say now our subject is clear of the disease and nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that?
Yes, I'm happy.
Good. That's good.
It's the end of 48 hours and I feel great. I feel inspired and I'm just happy. How I feel about genetic science today is that I still love it and I'm still interested in it. And I'm still going to pursue this career.
Coming up after the break, 48 Hours introduces Khanyisile to entrepreneur Christa North from GeneWay. Before the break, Khanyisile got to experience a day in the life of a genetic scientist at Inqaba Biotech. Now 48 Hours introduces her to entrepreneur Christa North from GeneWay so she can make an informed decision about working in this career. In the meantime, let's catch up with her to get her thoughts on her first day with 48 Hours.
I had an amazing first day at 48 Hours, and just when I thought it couldn't get any better, they hooked me up with a real go-getter. Today I'll be meeting Dr. Christa, who runs a company called GeneWay. Today I'll be pitching my labor of love for her, and I hope she enjoys it.
48 Hours went behind the scenes to give our candidate the lowdown on who she's about to meet. Let's hope this gives her a leg up with her pitch.
So when I was a child and when I was at school, genetics really wasn't even an option. There weren't even degrees to go and study that as well. So I went the science route and the genetics came later. So I think already in matric, I knew that I wanted to be a scientist, and I still do feel that's the right calling for me. And as when I was exposed, to genetics and saw the value that can bring to you, that's when I went, full-time into that, and that was only about 10 years ago. Genetics basically brought the missing link in terms of your advice that you give to patients as a dietitian. Now, when you give advice to patients, you look at their medical history, what their goals are, and so forth. However, you still are taking an educated guess. So, and with the genetics, because it's so precise, one knows, and it gives you confidence and the patient a lot of motivation, because it's your DNA and how you should follow that advice as well. In terms of GeneWay, an opportunity came along and we saw that there's a gap to be able to put results into a practical application for patients. And that's what I do. I'm basically bridging that gap. So the future of genetics in South Africa is basically limitless. If you look at patent registrations basically show us where the future will be, in terms of companies making money. And by far, in the past 5 years, most patents were registered in genetics. So that alone is just a very good indication for us where genetics is going. The fourth industrial revolution is basically bridging the gap between technology and biology. And in terms of genetics, we've got what we call big data. There are so much information available there as well. So, and the technology, is actually faster than what the genetic research is about. So there's an opportunity in terms of developing technology, in terms of apps and so forth, to bridge that and make that data that's available in terms of genetics very practical for patients to improve their health care.
Now that we know more about Christa from GeneWay, Khanyisile is eager to get to know her better.
Thank you, Dr. Christa, for having me here. What did inspire you to start your company?
So I was tested when I was at school, the aptitude test, and it actually showed that, what I probably will be good at, would be an application of science. And at that point in time, I was very interested, in food and nutrition. Your nutrition, your diet, influence your body and your health significantly. So that's how I ended up, in that.
So what inspired you to incorporate genetics in your dietetics?
So genetics is a relatively new field, a new science. It's only about 20 years old as well. And it's more recently that it actually became available in South Africa. And the first time when I heard about it and it was explained to me, it just made so much sense to me because it helped me to help my clients much, much better and take out a lot of the guesswork in helping them and consulting with them.
So what is the relationship between dietetics and genetics?
How your genes work is basically it's switched on and off by specific nutrients, and that's why diet is so very important. And what I have found, is that when you consult with a patient, whether it's treatment or preventative health care, you still are basically guessing. And what the dietetics are doing together with the genetics is to help you to be very specific and to tell somebody, well, if a specific gene is not working, this is, A, B, and C, what you can do in your diet to overcome that genetic deficiency and basically, circumvent that gene that is not functioning.
When you started the company, what do you think you'd offer to the industry and what sets you apart?
Affordability and accessibility. Before GeneWay, most of the DNA tests had to be sent overseas, against an astronomical amount of cost that you have to send DNA tests. So now it's affordable and accessible for people in South Africa. And what makes GeneWay definitely, very, very different is that we've got passionate people, we've got very practical reports, where patients can understand what is going on and set it out in actionable steps so that you know exactly what you can do, how long you should do it, what you should take, and so forth. So it's very, very practical for patients.
So, Doc, I have a concept that I'd like to pitch to you.
Can't wait.
Now that Khanyisile knows more about entrepreneurship, she's ready to pitch her idea to Christa.
My idea is that since there's a lack of information and things can be actually prevented if people had more knowledge about it, and there's a lack of access to it. So my idea is that I create an app called Genotech, in which it requires people's information about themselves and their families, and also by using that information, we can inform them about the types of mainly hereditary diseases that could happen and the possibility of them happening. So we take information such as blood types, race, age, etc. So I think my idea could help a lot of people.
For sure. And customers do want that knowledge. So they actually demand, we always talk about, this is preventative medicine or precision medicine. And we also now get what we call precision patients. And they basically want that information. They want to be in charge of their health. It's not just a matter anymore of to say, well, this is what the doctor said and I'm actually going to do it. So I actually really honestly do think that it's a very good idea, and I think there's definitely a market for that, that's for sure. And it doesn't really exist in South Africa.
And then when I thought about the app, I thought about the income, like where would I get the money to start the app? So I thought about research with corporations and universities, and also like the subscribers to the app. And then the market would be the general public, and then research institutes, and then also pharmacists and genome facilities. So what do you think?
Yes, yeah. So I think definitely people, like I said, consumers, people who actually do these tests, do it because they do want some information. They don't necessarily just do it, for fun. They actually do want to improve their health. So people are willing to pay for that, in terms of, individuals as well. The challenge potentially with certain corporates and pharmaceutical companies and so forth is, of course, that they would want the data. And when it comes to genetics, and specifically the genetic information of consumers, there's a lot of ethical issues potentially around that you don't just want it, freely available. So that's very often where there might be a bit of a challenge, But then, of course, there's also private, companies as well that, would want it, because that can also help them in their endeavors. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Christina, for taking the time to hear my pitch, and I'm very grateful that you heard it and gave me some feedback that is very useful to me. I'm so thankful.
No, you're very welcome. I actually do think you're definitely on the right path. You're very confident. I think you're going to be very successful, and I can't wait to see that app.
We've come to the end of a jam-packed 48 hours, but we'd like to do something that makes life just a wee bit better for this candidate. Dr. Christa North and her assistant Cynthia were so impressed with Khanyisile's pitch that they took her into their lab to help her contextualize her app. And not just that, they had a major surprise in store for her.
So, Kanye, we've got a bit of a surprise for you. So Cynthia, I'll let you start with your bit.
Kanye, I enjoyed having you in my lab so much that I'm inviting you for a week or so to come and shadow me at work anytime you want.
Okay. Yeah, and then also, I also think you would benefit to actually see the practical side in terms of the application. So I'd also love you to come and sit with me a little bit at the office, look at the training, and then of course, feedback, specifically to clients.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate everything that you guys have done for me. Thank you for the privilege that you always, just thank you for everything that you have done for me, and just taking the time to educate me and expand my knowledge. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Very welcome, Kanye.
So in the past 48 hours, I have went to the Ngaba biotech company where I met with Katlego, and then today I met with the entrepreneur, Dr. Christa North. And honestly speaking, it just expanded my knowledge, and I gained so much experience. And it also taught me that there's so many ways to enter within genetics, and I just grown a love for it again. So I enjoyed my time with 48 hours. Thank you for 48 hours for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for Katlego and Dr. Christa North, and all the people that just guided me through this journey. Thank you.
If you want to be part of the 48-hour experience, contact us on our social media page. If you're interested in more careers, make sure to go to our YouTube page and get inspired.